number, which is a young person actually literally only needs 2 adults, and I know that other numbers are bandied around the section, 2 adults that believe in them, comes from the quantitative evidence. This is huge, this area, but we go, oh, it's too scary. Can't go there. Too scary. The Dunedin studies found out around things around child abuse and the life outcomes of child abuse. So if you think back to what we said about the goals of science being to measure and describe, understand, predict and control, that's what the Dunedin study, the heart of it, is about. Let's understand what's going on in the lives of young people who are abused. What will happen for the rest of their life? Now, I know that you all know that that I haven't had the best of childhoods, and I can tell you that the Dunedin study has said that, I'm probably going to be someone that even if I break away from my past, I might operate in a high stress zone more than others. Now, I would actually say, yeah, that's actually quite true for me as a person, but I didn't know that pretty much everyone else in the world that's been abused has the same experiences in life, that even if you break away and you break that cycle, things just get on top of you so much, still so much easier. And so it's a really interesting thing. The qualitative, though, that's interesting in its own way, because it's a qualitative, and particularly within the Pacifica realm and the Māori realm, that begins to question some of the imposed Western knowledge. Not everything that comes from the West is quantitative. Erickson's theory, it's not based on quantitative research. It's based on his experiences of 5 young American youth. So he's based it on stories, experiences, and his own personal experience working with war veterans, created this massive theory. It's not based on quantitative evidence, and yet we know, and all of us in this room know, that not all young people go through an identity crisis. Or some people feel like they're in an identity crisis all the time. They don't quite know what world they're in. So the qualitative enables us to start questioning some of those big stories. And it actually really helps. The government, all they really want are numbers. We know that. When you're reporting about how good your programs are to government, they want numbers. And say if you're in an education context, I'll just pick on that for a moment, they want to know how many of your young people, if you're in alternative education, are either returning to school, going to a polytechnic, so that's returning to education, or transitioning to employment. And if your numbers are high, that young people are transitioning to the dole, then they'll take your funding. Okay, so we know that the government wants this, the quantitative, how many. But if a person like Jacinda Ardern or Bill English walk into your centre, the most powerful thing you can give them is not the numbers at this point. The most powerful thing you can give them is the qualitative, the stories, because the stories tug at the heartstrings. And that's why most of you put up your hand with the mixed methods. Because you can give the quantitative, but often the most powerful thing out of it is the actual story. And mixed methods have another benefit of the story is able to verify the numbers. Okay, the BYD's come a long way as a degree, and we've got the numbers to prove it. Not just numbers of enrolments, numbers of returning students. Pretty much with the BYD, most of our students go on for employment or education. We know that, we've got those numbers, but there's nothing like grabbing someone when we present those numbers in our reports. We often will ask you all for your experiences and we'll write your stories into those reports. We won't use your names. Because actually it's your story to us that's more important than you being a number on a seat. And to our institution it really works. And NZQA, who give us money, they want both now. Okay. Now, in all research, really good research, and it's often hard to find them in journal articles, in all research, it is guided, good research is guided by a question. Guided by a question. And we'll look into this further as you go on, but the question will determine what methods are used. So if I want to know how successful the BYD is in completion, so you actually finishing your degree, then I'm going to count. That's quantitative, and that was determined by my question. Okay? You can't go, I want to know how successful the BYD is and completion, and then go and interview students. Because they haven't completed, and even if I interviewed students who had completed, the story I'm telling is their story and not the answer to the question. The question is how successful the BYD is in completion. Okay. If the question is what are the experiences of young people in a restorative justice conference, experiences, that tells you story. How many? Numbers. Experiences, story. How successful is the BYD as a program? Could be a mix. Numbers plus the stories of our students. Okay, that's the role of the question. So we've got this bit here, research approaches. The role of the question determines everything that follows. It tells you what your methods are going to be. It tells you how you're going to look at your findings. It tells you how you're going to present your findings. How many tells you I'm going to expect to see graphs and tables. Experience tells me I want to see quotes. Okay, so the role of the question determines everything. Now, in quantitative research, you might find that the analysis has a hypothesis. Does anyone know what a hypothesis is? Excellent, it's a guess. The hypothesis is what the researchers guess is going to happen. Now, they might do an experiment where the hypothesis is stated, but if they're not doing an experiment, if they're doing an analysis which involves numbers, that analysis might actually use a hypothesis. Okay, a guess. So I'm going to guess now that if I drop this brick, this Jenga brick, it will hit the table. You ready?
It's logical.
It didn't hit the table. My hypothesis was not proven. Yeah. Okay. Now we're going to go further into the hypothesis in the future, and you'll find that you don't actually have to talk about the hypothesis here at all. Okay. You might want to mention it if you found a quantitative study, but yeah, the hypothesis is merely, or hypotheses are merely the guesses of the researcher. Okay. And your practice, if you're wanting to do the best work for your young people, you'll be using a mixture of quantitative and mixed methods. A mixture of those both. You'll often find yourself wanting just to go on to the stories because they're so much easier to read, but actually there's huge limitations if you stay there. Any questions on all this stuff? Cool. Okay, this is the process of research. The researchers know this, and we've talked, and what you'll find is a lot of this, and that's why I thought I'd put the camera on today, but a lot of this repeats yesterday. The researchers know that whakapapa is important. Okay? And that's why you will always find a literature review in any research study. They want to honour everyone that's come before them. Okay, and I often say that this is probably the bit that trips students up the most, because often you get all these words at the beginning of a journal article and you think you have to read them when you don't. That's actually not the author study. don't really need to read that. Okay? And often when you're going through research, you don't have to, you normally read the introduction and read, because I realise that's not on there. When you're going through a research study, you'll have a particular question. For this course, your questions are going to be mainly on how they've done the research. So you're going to be mainly focusing on that section there. That's the section you're going to read for your essay. You're going to read the methods section. You're not going to read the introduction section. You might look at what type of picture they're using in the results or summary section, whether they're quotes or whether they're numbers. You might want to glimpse at the discussion section and scan it to see what they actually found out. You probably read the abstract to see whether you're interested in the study. But really, you're going to just hone in on that method section because that's what you're learning about in this course. Okay? But yeah, the literature review is the researcher honouring all those people that have come beforehand. All of those people. And the literature review will finish with words that you can change into the question. So, I'm just picking on here. Young people, voting behaviour, alienated youth, and an interesting and critical citizenry. I'm going through. Oh, this is terrible, it's got quasi-reading. In conclusion, what emerges is the relationship between trust, cynicism and efficacy and the effects on voting behaviours are complex and it's combined rather than individual effects that are pertinent in understanding young people's engagement with their electoral policies. They just want their question is going to be what is the complexity of all these factors when they come together. Okay? I know that I could get that really quickly, we'll do some stuff around that, but yeah, the research question is really, really important. And that will fall out of the literature. So it might be at the end of the literature review. It usually can be in the actual heading itself. And often the heading you can turn into a question and you'll be right at what you get. Okay? The hypotheses, like I said, you'll find those in quantitative research and quantitative analysis. And the methods and analysis that the researcher uses will always fall out of that question. There are 4 rules of research, and we will repeat these rules over and over again. And these ones are horrible words: replicability, precision, falsibility, and parsimony. So replicability means, can you repeat the study? That's why they've got a method section, so that anyone can actually pick it up and repeat it. So when I get you to do like research reports for me, and I've got to put a method section in that research report, that's so I can see what you've done, and then if I wanted to do it, I could do it myself and find the same things you found out. Okay, so the replicability section means, can you actually repeat the study? Can it be done again and again and again and again? So we can determine how confident we are in your truth. Okay? Precision means, can you actually give us an exact answer to your question? Can you refine it? You know, just asking what are the experiences of New Zealanders in an election year, that's going to give me no real, like some people will talk about voting, but some people will say, actually in an election year, the election's got nothing to do with my life. And then they'll go on about experiences in general. Okay? Falsibility basically means that any study is actually developed to find the truth by trying to prove that the research is wrong. Now that might sound bizarre, but here's how it works. In the you know how children, if you told children, do not touch little toddler, little Bubs there, when Bubs is 3 years old, do not touch the stove. Hot, hot, hot. What is Bubs going to want to do again and again and again?
Touch the stove.
Stuff. I said yesterday we're born researchers. We're born researchers because we operate on this principle, falsibility. We try to prove mum wrong all the time. My mother, when I was a teenager, bought Watties, the unbreakable tomato sauce bottle. You don't do that when Fiona's in the room. And I proved that it was breakable. And I got a bit of a hiding for that one. We tend to explore our world by trying to question everything that's in our world. And that's what researchers do. Okay? So just because I have predicted that this block is going to hit the table, I'm going to prove it by dropping it and show that it doesn't hit the table. Or, just because I said that the brick's going to hit the table, I'm still going to try to disprove it by dropping the brick. Okay, and that's how teenagers work too, you know that. Did you think about the consequences? We talked about this before we put the group contract into place. Okay, parsimony basically means when the results you get are really, really complex, then just choose the easiest answer. Okay, don't go really complex here, right? Just because the spaceship, I'm going to have to get one that's really, I usually use the alien sort of stuff. Just because, thinking about Columbus and the ship, just because the ship disappears over the horizon doesn't mean that the ship is gone and the flat world no longer exists. There could be actually a more simple answer. The horizon might go a lot further than we think. Never try to be complex. You all, and I can still pick on you, Bella, you all do the worst thing here. When we tell you to read a journal article and we give you a question, and we tell, if I give you a question such as, what does this article tell you about Indigenous young people? And then I read you out a sentence, current national data indicate that more teens are choosing not to have sexual intercourse. Now I can say this for you, and then I ask you, what does that say about Indigenous young people? Most of you in the room will still try to come up with an answer, even though that said nothing. The simple answer says nothing. But because I've asked you, you've tried to come up with a really complex answer. Okay, so research follows those rules, particularly empirical research. Can it be repeated? Can it be precise? Is the research trying to disprove something as well? And when things are really complex, has the researcher actually given us the simplest answer, right, rather than going off on a tangent? Any questions on that stuff? Right. Okay, so here is how the research approach normally works. And I don't think this is, you can download these slides, okay, from our Moodle. Here is the green, here, that a researcher might have a theory. Theory is the world is round. I will test this theory by stating an hypothesis. I think the world is round, and so now I'm going to disprove it by trying to drop off the edge of the world. Okay? And then I'm going to try and prove or disprove it. Okay? That's deductive. Okay? And that will mean that I need to use quantitative approaches. I've got a theory, I've got an hypothesis, the world is round, I'm going to get into a boat and see what happens. I will either drop off, prove it, or still be in my boat. I'll use a quantitative approach to do that. I might observe something in the world. I might observe that young people in our country, our suicide rates are going up. So I've observed that. My research question might be saying like, why is our suicide rates coming up? I don't know the outcome. Okay, so it's inductive. I have to find a theory. So I'm going to use a quantitative approach to give me that theory. Now, once I've got that theory, I might say poverty. That's how I started today when I said I've just found who I'm going to vote for, because last night I heard that one politician, the only politician ever in my entire life, say that the single biggest cause of youth suicide in New Zealand is the poverty in the 1980s. Bang, you've got my heart, you've got my vote. Okay? That's my theory, but now I need to test it. Does poverty really cause suicide? Okay, well what I'll do is I'll make you all poor, and then I'll measure how many of you actually commit suicide. Now, trust me, you're not allowed to do that in research, okay? So I'm going to prove or disprove it. That's quantitative, but then I might observe something else. I might observe that, I managed to increase the suicide rate in the BYD astronomically by making all students poor, but what I did notice was the students that were eating bananas tended to get through. So I'm wondering whether vitamin B in bananas can actually offshoot poverty. So therefore, what we need to do to solve the poverty question is not money, but bananas. So there you go, I'm going to now go, will bananas solve poverty without us giving them money? I'll use the qualitative approach, I'll come up with another theory, it goes round and round in circles. Okay? So, in an inductive approach, you've got a whole lot of information around bananas and poverty that's going to give you a theory. In a deductive approach, you see what's going on around you, you have a theory, and then you use your quantitative measures to give you the real world. This whole cycle make a little bit of sense? One more time. We've got to come up with another thing now. I don't like to start in the quantitative, so I'm going to start in the qualitative. Okay? I observe that there is huge differences in the education system between Māori, Pacifica and Pākehā. My question is, what are these differences?